All right, guys, I'm going to give you a quick overview on how to set up your camera phone. The first tip of the day is as soon as you take it out, clean your lens. Just take the inside of your shirt and give it away. But it's very, very important that you do this. Don't skip this step. Um, if you have a dirty lens, it will show up in the photo. It will diffract the light. It changes the way that the light hits the sensor. So just take the inside of your shirt, give your lens front and back, whichever one you're using, make sure you clean it really well because it will matter. Okay? All right, let's jump into it. All right, I wanted to go over some initial features of the camera. This is an iPhone 13, but most new iPhones have this operating system, and the Android phones are quite similar, and I will do an Android phone overview at another time. But for now, let's take a look at this. Number one, you must clean your lens. So if you haven't already, just go ahead and do that. You can just clean it with the inside of your shirt. It is made of glass. It's not going to scratch, but you don't clean it with sandpaper, and don't clean it with paper towels. Wood fiber can be coarse and harmful to your lens. Okay, so a couple of things that you'll notice is I have a couple of different settings than you do on your phone because I set it up to show that. First thing I want to talk about is RAW versus JPEG. This is very important setting to have on because when you are shooting for your business, you are going to use the RAW setting. The reason why will become clear later, but for now, I will just show you how to set that so you have the function there to choose from. So scroll down to your settings and go to the camera setting. So in here, you'll go to Format, and you're going to turn on photo capture for Apple ProRes and turn on video capture for Apple ProRes, and you're going to set the setting to be most compatible. And that's going to allow you to have the button at the top to let you know whether or not you want to shoot in Apple Res, which is a RAW format, or not. The second item that we should talk about is setting your video format to large also. So when you're on your video, you can select ProRes, and you can also change your settings here to 60 frames and also to 4K. So I wanted to talk about ProRes for 1 second for video. So if you have your camera setting to video and you wanted to turn on ProRes, this does give you a better file quality, but it is very intensive on your phone in terms of storage and processing time. So I actually don't use that feature on my phone. You can also change the frame rate and the size of video that's being recorded. HD is slightly smaller, 4K is larger, and then that's the only two that you have there. You have 60 frames, 30 frames, and 24 frames. 24 frames being in 4K mode. There you go. You have 24 frames, which is a little bit more cinematic, but generally HD 30 is just fine for what I'm doing. One other thing to note, when you are using your camera, the volume button is the shutter button. So you can use it to start and stop video. You can use it to take a photo. So that's a very convenient little feature instead of having to press the shutter button on your camera. One thing I want to talk about, the grid. The grid is an important feature if you're shooting interiors or architecture, because the grid will allow you to compose things. Without it, you sometimes can't tell if things are straight or not. So having the grid on is a nice feature. The macro setting, sometimes if you're trying to take photos of things, objects that are really close up, you want to make sure your camera focuses in a macro mode. So that's gonna change the lens that it uses and how it focuses. So That's something that you want to have and be able to turn on if you need it. And the way to turn that one on and off is down at the bottom. You have this macro control you can turn on and off. Okay. All right. And I want to talk about low light mode. Low light mode is this button up here. If it automatically will detect if there's not enough light. If you see that there's not enough light, it'll tell you how many seconds you must hold the camera still. Right now it says 5 seconds. So if I press this shutter, it's going to take a 5-second exposure. So if you have a tripod, this is how you would use it. With the iPhone, it's quite good. So even if you didn't have a tripod and you wanted to make a nighttime exposure, as long as you hold it relatively still, you can see that I have 2 arrows there, and it's gonna tell me to hold it still. So I'm gonna keep those 2 arrows lined up when I'm doing it. And that will give me an image where they composite it together. The flash mode, I generally just leave off because I don't like the artificial flash that's built in to the camera. Extra modes that you can use, of course, you have your video mode, you have your cinematic mode. Cinematic is for video, and it automatically blurs what's in the background. So, for example, you're taking a photo of a can like this, it will blur the background for you. It will detect the subject, and it will blur the background. Same thing with portrait mode. If you're using portrait mode, it will detect the subject, and it will blur the background for you. And you can have a variety of lighting to choose from as well. A good one is time-lapse mode. So if you want to show what it looks like during a service at a restaurant, or what it looks like before and after, or the process of someone getting a haircut, or whatever your business is offering in terms of service, doing a time lapse is a great way to show that. Slow-mo is very useful. Just make sure you have enough light. Portrait mode we talked about, and pano mode is pretty good too if you have a large space that you need to capture. I wanted to talk about warmth. So when you shoot the photo, you have this additional feature down here. Up here, it will allow an additional menu to come up. It will allow you to turn on the night mode, turn on the live mode, turn on, this is your styles. So generally, if you're in an interior space and it's looking a little bit blue, maybe you want to turn on the warmth tone. So in fact, this warm tone is more reflective of this actual table color. This is something that it's good to just keep on for now. You have a variety of crops that you can choose. You can adjust your exposure up and down. To change your exposure, I'll show you one quick method. You can press and hold the object that you're shooting at, and you can swipe up and swipe down. Swiping up makes it overexposed, swiping down makes it underexposed. Now you'll notice that by clicking and holding, you'll get this little box that says AE and AF lock, which means the auto exposure and autofocus has been locked. So that means when you move your camera, it's not going to re-expose. So once that is locked, when you move your camera, it's not going to re-expose the photo, and it's not going to refocus the photo. So it's not going to, so now if I move closer, you'll see that it's blurry and it's not going to refocus. If I click on it again, it's going to refocus. For example, if you were shooting a bunch of products in a row and you had your phone camera on a tripod, you can simply shoot a photo, take the object out, put another object in without changing the exposure and focus. Okay, so that's one method for how to use that. Okay, one last tidbit. To keep yourself organized, oftentimes it's good to use folders and albums, and you can even use folders and albums to share photos with your team. So here you can for example, if I just wanted to create a new shared album, and I'm gonna share it. I'm gonna call it test. And I'm gonna share it with myself. Okay, create. So now when I put photos in here, the person who I had an email to will receive a notification. So I can add images, the ones that I've just done here just now. And they come in here, post it. And so now the person I've shared it to, when they log into this folder, they'll be able to see these files and they'll be able to download it. Other ways that you can share your photos, you can make a selection of them. And down here, there's a share a button, and you can either transfer it through AirDrop to any Mac device you own, or there's a way. For me, I use Dropbox. So in fact, you can actually save it to Dropbox. You can save it to files, which you can use in the Apple architecture, but Dropbox is another good one. Okay, so I want to show you really quick how to take a photo of a kitchen area. It could be any interior, of course. So you have your camera app open here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to line up this kitchen here. And I do have my grid lines, as you can see. So what I want to do is I want to use those grid lines, and I just want to look all around the edges of my photo to make sure that the lines are lined up. So you see, if this is the case, it's not lined up. If this is the case, it's not lined up. I can also tilt forward and back. So what I want to do is be as flat as the wall that's in front of me. And I'm going to just use my finger here to click the top. Okay, so that's the photo. If I accidentally shot a photo slightly off, let me show you how we can fix it. You can also, of course, go side to side like that, and it will change the way that the photo looks. So I'm going to shoot one that's pretty far off. And then let me do one where this is a typical one that you would see somebody take. And let me show you how you would make changes to these on your phone. Okay, so we just finished shooting a couple of images of the kitchen, and I'm going to show you really quick how to edit these on the phone. So this is the type of image that I think would be the right kind of image to use, but there's a little bit of things that are off about it. I don't like the space on this side. So what I want to do is I'm going to brighten up some of the dark areas here, and I'm going to crop out this area here. So I'm going to go to my edit screen. First, I'm going to go and crop it. That's on this side. So I'm just going to crop it into a square format. Okay, I can actually choose my formats here. So there we go, that's square, good. All right, and that one I didn't really have to do much to, because I can see that it's aligned here, it's aligned here, it's aligned here. So that to me is an image that is perspectively correct for an interior. Now, what about an image like this? This one is not perspectively correct. So how you would fix that is you would go to this tool up here. I'm sorry, not that one. You would go to, so that's obviously to flip your image, but here we are. We want to lean it back a little. Lean it back a little bit, okay? And from side to side, you can see that the top line is just a tiny bit off. So I'm just gonna shift that perspective a little bit there, okay? So that the top line is aligned and the middle line is aligned and the two side lines are also aligned, but I don't necessarily like the crop, so I'm gonna change that to a square crop and move the image over. Okay, so essentially I have the same image as before, but slightly different because I had to crop some of it out, okay? Framed I don't have the full arch on top, but I do have more stove. So depending on what you're trying to showcase in your photograph, you may switch the crop to do that. All right. Okay, so here's another view of a photo that sometimes people will take with their phones. It does have what you need in the center, but they neglected to change their camera, which lens they used. They used a wide angle lens, and they shot it just by standing there and holding their phone, not holding it flat to the, essentially it would be as flat as the wall, but right here it's not. It's sliding, pointing down and a little bit to the left. So how do we fix that? So same thing, come in here, and we're just gonna do a couple of things. One is you can see the lines are coming down like this. So what we need to do is lean the image back. Okay, just lean the image back till those lines are straight up and down. There might be a twist to it. So let's see if there is a twist to it. It does give you some handy dandy grids that you can use to look at. If the lines are still going like this, you haven't sort of gone enough. So here we go. And you can see that the floor lines are a little bit pointing up. And if the top is also pointing up, then we need to come to this left and right swing tool. Okay, so a little bit like that. All right, so now let's just take a look at what happens. Oops, that is the wrong one. So I want to crop it to a, let's just do a vertical. Let's do a vertical 4:5, and we'll zoom in. So we can see that the top line remains a little bit out of whack. Let me turn off the crop tool. Let me just so actually, let me just reset everything here. Okay. All right, let's try that one more time. So what I want to do, make my verticals that way. Rotate. Little bit tricky here. Got a lot of different lines. There we go. So as you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble, and it takes a few tries. Okay. All right, there you go. We're gonna cheat it a little bit. Okay, so there you have an image that is more square than it was before. Obviously, if we had taken the image as a properly framed up shot, we wouldn't have to correct it afterwards, but you can see that there are some tools built into your phone that you can use to correct it. So that's very nice to begin with. So that will save you a lot of time. All right, hey guys, I wanted to show you real quick a little trick on how to use your phone's wide angle feature and then cropping the image afterwards, and what this can do for your perspectives, okay? So here I have framed up an image here. So maybe what I want to do is I can't see the stove, right? and you can see that. And maybe in the end, the image is going to be a tight image, and that's, the image is going to be about like that, but I can't see the stove. So if I wanted to, and I went up high to shoot an image of the stove, I'm not going to get the right framing. I'm going to get lines that converge, and that's not good for me. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to the wide angle view, and I'm going to shoot a photo. Let me see if I can see this. I'm going to shoot a photo from a higher up angle, okay? But still keeping my phone parallel to, if I was pretending to be a wall, let me show you. All right, so I have a few different shots here. One is taken with the RAW format, and this is shot in RAW, as you can see. This one is also shot in RAW, but this last one is shot as a JPEG. And I'm going to show you the difference between what I can change and what I cannot. So this one was an example of shooting at the normal height, my head height, and you can't see the stove and you can't see much rug. And so what I wanted to do was shoot one slightly higher, that with a wide angle that I can crop later, and I can show you how I'm going to crop that now. So I want a 4x5 vertical crop, and I'm just going to crop out the top and the bottom. And go to the framing of the shot that I actually want. And there you go. So now you have more on the bottom without sacrificing the angle, the perspective, without having to fix that in post-production. And then also what we want to do is we want to do a couple of things. We want to fix the exposure. We want to just make that brighter. And you can see there are certain areas that are going to blow out, but I do have quite a bit of leeway to play here. So up 30, it says, work on brilliance or the highlights. What I'm going to do is raise the shadows because the cabinets are very dark. So I can raise the shadows here quite a bit before it starts to look bad. Once I've done that, what I want to do is I want to fix the sharpness of the image. So I can just make it sharper there. Definition is sometimes called vibrance, sometimes called clarity, sometimes called dehaze. So this will get rid of some of the gray in the blacks, because you don't want your blacks to look gray, especially if you're backlit. And then also you want to fix the saturation, just pick it up just a tiny bit, a little bit more lively, a little bit of vibrance. Okay, so there you have it. That's a pretty well exposed photo. Okay, and let me see if you can see that there. All right, and the difference with this one is a photo shot as a JPEG format. So same thing, we'll go in and edit the shape of it. Okay, and you can tell that again the image is slightly dark, so we're going to continue editing it. We're going to do the exposure, brighten it up. You can see that with I can't brighten it up where I can recover the darks without blowing out the whites. So this automatically limits me to how much editing I can do, because a JPEG is essentially a photo that's already been printed. So the shadows, what I want to do is pick up the shadows, but you can see that it's not really helping the cabinet, which is already too dark as it is. I'm gonna work on the brightness a little bit and take down the exposure a little bit. No, that doesn't really look good. Let me try creating the definition here. The definition separates contrast between pixels, noise reduction, sharpness. I don't want to sharpen too much. Okay, so you can kind of see the difference here between one that's shot in JPEG mode and one that was shot in RAW mode. And you can see in RAW mode, I was able to recover enough data in the dark to see that the drawer, and you can see the drawer, the way that the shaker cabinets are decorated. And you can see nice pattern in the rug and so on and so forth. And you can see that the whites don't have any weird blowout issues. Whereas if you go to the JPEG version, the black's too dark to be able to get the contrast out of these cabinets. The whites are looking kind of gray here instead of a nice contrast. All right, and the colors are already too saturated for me to do anything else with. So there you go. That's the difference between editing in RAW versus in JPEG mode.